they're sort of given a ride in space to go and see the 12 heavens, or the 10 heavens rather, and they end up in this environment which is, in the sort of face of God and so on. And from my point of view, that could well be being brought by the Anunnaki to this alien world, and they're living in an environment for a while where there is no darkness and there is all light, and everything seems to be just really nice and sweet and happy, and there's this constant light in the sky that's really bright and radiant, and their description of that is this sort of, face of God and a completely alien world, really. But it's speculative. I can't base that idea particularly on something that's come to me that is a fact that I'm here to sort of promote. It is an idea. But what I would say, and this is another thing that I've sort of found over the last few years since I've started doing this, is that actually some of my ideas actually come true. And I had that very strange thing when I first brought out Ezekiel 1, where one of the characters in the book, who was a chap who was running the paper in London, was a Russian billionaire. And lo and behold, the same paper that I'd based that on ended up getting bought by this Russian billionaire. He's since gone and bought a couple more papers. And he's quite sort of, he's in character very much with the chap I envisaged, which is really odd. And
yeah, I was wondering about that when I was reading about that, yes.
Yeah, and that was about a year later, you see. I mean, that was just really bizarre. And fun, really. But it came true. And then there's been a few other things, sort of fairly minor things that have occurred. And you do have to wonder whether, subconsciously, when you're sitting down and using this creative process to come up with ideas, whether it's a little bit of it's remote viewing, whether you're actually tuning into stuff and picking stuff up, and the ideas are sort of coming to you and almost channeled in a way. I mean, I haven't got
absolutely.
I haven't got sort of Antares from Sirius telling me this stuff, but there does seem to be the potential that you're immersing yourself in the collective unconscious or remote viewing or whatever it is and picking ideas up.
Well, actually, now along those lines, I mean, I have said this before, and I know I'm not supposed to be saying it, but I say it anyway. What a lot of people don't realize is, and I have it from an insider, that Sitchin was or feels that he was in contact with the Anunnaki, that he feels that he was channeling. He wasn't just, writing these books, that in essence he was in contact. Or, in essence, at least channeling contact, in that form. So that's a very interesting piece of information, because as very much he seems like a scholarly historian, working very logically and so on and so forth. That's exactly right. And that is another side to, as you say, the artistic process is where are you getting your information from to even write the book or the, in essence, we are all tapping into the universal mind, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And you are open to that. And then you actually have evidence to where what you've been tapping into has come true. And I've had that same experience myself. I wrote a screenplay in which I had, in essence, what I realized later was remote viewing the moon and the structures on the moon, and ended up later interviewing Hoagland, and he talked about these glass-like lattice structures, and I had posited that in my screenplay before I ever met Hoagland or knew about that notion. Yeah. And I can go into that. I won't go into that in any more detail at this moment because it wouldn't be in keeping with this situation here. But it is fascinating when you get information that ends up to be true and just how it is that happens. Yeah. Now, that's why I would never, and I would also caution people out there, if you want to write off what in essence is fiction, Arthur C. Clarke is a perfect example. I mean, you're talking about people that are writing books that may contain more truth than fiction in essence. Yeah. And I certainly, we were trying to interview Arthur C. Clarke right before he died. We were about to go over to Sri Lanka and then he died. And we had been told by a couple of people that he had some real secrets as to what was going on the planet here, and that, some of that has entered into his work. Childhood's End comes to mind, and I always use that because I think that that is stunning in some of the depth of the concept of understanding what it might mean, in essence, for us to be sort of under the thumb of an advanced race, a lot like the TV series V is trying to do at the moment too.
And I can, to a very, very much lesser extent, I can understand the conundrum faced by Arthur C. Clarke and his like, and that is that if you want to be taken seriously in the sense that you come up with an idea and it's got scientific validity, take for instance his idea of satellites, which were borne out beautifully. And you want to be taken seriously for your science fiction ideas that are based upon science. But you don't also want to jeopardize those ideas by completely going off. I can see where he's at. He has to be very, very careful. And fiction is a beautiful vehicle for that. And my thing was, I wrote Dark Star, and I tried to make it as scientifically watertight as I possibly could. I took the whole Planet X genre and I examined it, and then I put forward my own ideas, and then I looked through the literature that was available around about that subject at the time in science and picked out interviews and journal articles and so on to back it up, and brought forward the quotes from various astronomers that I came into contact with who said, this is an interesting idea, I think there could be some validity to it, or this works or this doesn't work, or so on. And I tried to make it scientifically watertight. Now, if I want to take that book and say this thing gets discovered, and I then want to say, look, I wrote this in 2005, I had this idea back in 1999, I would like to say that I was involved in having a thought about this, then in order to be taken seriously from that point of view, if I start sitting down and like maybe had some ideas like maybe Mr. Clarke did, that you then have to try and portray, which are far more speculative, you have to be very careful not to put those two together so that they say, that science that you wrote there is a complete waste of time because you've also said X, Y, and Z about the Anunnaki and so on and so forth. Now, I've read tons and tons of books on ufology. UFOs exist from my point of view. I'm absolutely convinced of it. The evidence is there, and we have been visited. I am quite certain of it, and I am quite certain that there is a monumental government cover-up within the United States and probably most of the other countries in the world as well. And I'm quite certain of that from everything that I've read and experienced and heard about from various people, many of whom you talked about this evening. And when you get into that, when you realize that there is this whole new paradigm out there that explains the world far, far better than the one that we've all get rammed down our throat every day in the newspapers and on the television, then, you have to think outside the box. You have to think outside the normal ways of thinking and explore different ideas. But keeping those two, it's almost like being schizophrenic. If you want to maintain any kind of scientific validity to one set of ideas, then you have to, in some way, portion off the other set of ideas separately. And it's really, really strange thing to do. So I see where you're coming from with him. I really do. I can quite believe that being as influential as he was, that he could well have been made, brought into the confidence of various high-up people who just wanted to pass ideas to him and get him to comment on them. I can quite imagine that.
Yes, absolutely. Well, that's what it said. It is said that he was very much in the know. And unfortunately, because it was close to the end of his life, one would think that, had we been able to get in the same room with him, who knows what we could have learned. And that's a really tantalizing thought.
Well, I can imagine you would have learned a lot, Kerry, because you were an excellent interviewer, and I'd imagine that you really would have got some really tantalizing ideas out of him, really.
Well, I like to think so anyway, but thank you for that. That's very, very nice of you. But to go along with this notion, because in the book, I have an issue with the notion of the technology that you're using, and I really am curious